Dressing is a big deal to me. Ever since I, A, became single, and B, lost 60 pounds, I've become something of a clothes horse. It's such a neat word. I wanted to use it. Am I like sawhorse? But for clothing instead of sawing. At any rate, at the smallest, snottiest, exclusivest, I know, not a word, little men's boutiques I can find. At first, I was content merely having the guys at Nordstrom, all known by name, and call me when they got new seasons of worth of fashions. That was merely a gateway, like marijuana in the eyes of conservatives, to littler shops, where each individual thread in garment has value measured in dollars, not pennies. Sadly, these kinds of shirts require dry cleaning, which requires that I make it to the dry cleaner. This is something of an issue for me, because I'm wont to keep odd hours, and because when I'm awake, I'm usually working. CF, being single, the suckiness inherent therein. So, for the last week, in preparation of WWDC, I've been driving around with a big blue laundry bag full of dirty shirts in the passenger seat of my pimp ride. I should mention that when I was a wee lad, I had visions of one day getting a pimp ride, so that when I passed pretty women on the side of the street who were forlornly walking somewhere, I could pull up and say, "Hey, mamacita, you want a ride?" I've since been informed that women find this, in fact, really creepy, so I've never actually done it, but I have to mention that every guy has a fantasy of one day doing this, even while admitting this fantasy is a direct opposition to any possible reality. I also should mention that I wish to Jackson out and hit on 12-year-old boys instead of women, a pimp ride is the perfect way to go. The number of times I've had 12-year-old boys yell out, "Pimp de pimp, pimp, pimp," to me when I drive by is surprisingly high, considering I have previously never heard the pimp de pimp, pimp, pimp called and have no idea what it means, but for 12-year-olds, it's some kind of lingua franca. At any rate, you can imagine how cool it is to drive by a pretty woman walking in the rain and think, "Hey, I should offer her a ride." Wait, then she'd have to have my big bag of stinky shirts in her lap. That'll probably strike her as pretty strange, possibly even frightening. So it is that, when packing for WWDC 2005, I only took one good shirt with me. Mind you, this was a really good shirt. This shirt was made in London by a guy named Ted or James or some such, which to me lends instant credibility to it, because as much as I love the blue states in my country, when I think of America, I think of rebels. I think of individualists. I think of can-do spirits and indomitable dedication to individual freedoms and happiness. But I don't think nice shirts. London, on the other hand, has class, a panache, and Ted James clearly was the latest in a long line of shirt makers who had, for generations, been making shirts for discerning gentlemen not carrying guns and or shipping off criminals to unsettled countries. Notice the cotton in this shirt simply from normal cotton plants? Oh no, it's grown someplace exotic like Morocco, and it seems to carry a slight scent of the spices of distant lands on it. Bury your face in this shirt and you can almost hear Bogey whispering, "Listen, kid, this shirt is bigger than the both of us." I've received about 5 or so unsolicited compliments in this shirt, which is 5 more than I have in any other shirt. Guys don't get compliments on their shirts a lot, unless they say, "Hey, look at this shirt," which I admit I've done a couple times, but I'm saying I've been complimented on this shirt without fishing for it 5 times. And so I wore this shirt on Tuesday, WWDC 2005, because Tuesday was a day of Apple Design Award. My previous company had won a number of these when I was running it, and so this award had a personal meaning to me. This was the first time my new company had entered, and I had high hopes. And hope should I, where am I? I had high hopes, and should I win, I wanted to be on that stage smiling at the crowd while looking fine in my shirt that combined the best parts of London and Morocco. And here's where the story takes a tragic turn, because in their unknowable yet infallible wisdom, Apple suddenly decided the design awards would be on Wednesday. I found this out late Tuesday, spent the day grousing to all and sundry about how this messed up my plans vis-a-vis the shirt. And everyone agreed that it was, in fact, a very nice shirt. But I should note that I didn't count
What
these
is
compliments.
this even?
It's
What am I
it's-
listening to?
It's titled to This is a really
Oh
long,
my
pointless
God.
story. It gets better, dude. It gets so much better.
Holy shit.
That I didn't count these compliments towards my previously mentioned total of 5, because I was really fishing. For a moment, I thought this mishap might end up for the best, because that night, several of us nerds ended up at a bar, and in the mildly drunken state, I started talking with a pretty lady about, well, I don't remember. Something, I'm sure, well, we'll call her Laurie Anderson, because she looks like a young Laurie Anderson. And I'll be more evocative this way. I don't exactly hit on Laurie per se, but I will say I was glad I was wearing a nice shirt. It wasn't until the next night that one of her friends let me know, in a very friendly manner, that if I had intentions toward Miss Anderson, I might reconsider them, because she was in fact as interested in women as I was. Which was a nice thing to do, frankly, because it's good to know the boundaries of your relationship with someone right at the start. I like it when women I'm talking to let it be known that they have a steady boyfriend, for example, not because I can then cut bait and run, but because I can adjust my expectations and demeanor accordingly, not to embarrass myself or her. For example, you don't say, I want to nibble your neck to a woman with a boyfriend. Instead, you'd use the more coy, if you didn't have a boyfriend, I would certainly be interested in your neck, vis-a-vis the nibbling thereof. See, it's all about the delivery. But upon reflection later that night, I felt I hadn't made very effective use of my shirt, and so it was with a heavy heart that I finally took it off. Realizing that it had been sullied for naught. Mic isn't working, but I want to say that I stopped listening for a long time. Dude, it's so good. You have to... I'll keep on going. Where am I? Sullied for naught. Actually, I was pretty drunk when I got back to the hotel. So all I remember is thinking about how much effort it was to take clothes off and put them in a pile. Much of it. Long time. I'm not sure if I should continue. It's like so long.
God.
Okay, no, I think it's worth it. Okay. Okay. It was the next afternoon, morning having been lost to C2H50OH. I'm pretty sure that's like a... While I was putting on one of my t-shirts and again mentioning how unhappy I was to be thus dressed for the design awards, that Mike said, with that clarity of vision associated with the genius, hey, you could, like, go buy a new shirt. Tutu and I looked at each other, and although it may have been that we were both still under the effects of chemicals, we instantly... Why am I South Jaw? Under the effects of chemicals, we instantly agreed that this was why Mike was the smart one. My step had a spring to it. I asked the concierge where I might find a fancy fashion forward shirt in downtown San Francisco. I figured this would be a slam dunk. Here's a city whose culture ranks up with New York's and Paris, France. Here's a city where the rich scions of industry have nothing to do with their money but impress each other with their fancy baubles and ornaments. Pulled out a map and circled a block. Here's Nordstrom's. Wrong, wrong, wrong. First off, Nordstrom's is not a fashion forward, even if they do try to sell orange shirts to golfers in the winter. Second, if I wanted to go freaking Nordstrom's, I go to the original one, right next to where I live. I'm in San Francisco, the city by the bay. Wow me with your culture. There's a Saks on 3rd. No, 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 no! You're not getting me. I want a boutique. Well, Nordstrom's has different departments, They're kind of like boutiques. No! How did we get back here? Seriously, no. Then, suddenly, she saw, oh, there's a little place called Pink. You might want to check that out if you're not freaked out by the name. Lady, I'm a true metrosexual. I'm not worried about my masculinity when I shop. You could tell me there's a store called Sweaty Men in a Bath.
What? 20 men, man? Oh,
Sweaty men in a bathhouse. And I go if it had Moroccan cotton. T2 and I jumped into a cab, and I immediately bought 2 slim fit shirts from Thomas Pink of London. The gentlemen who helped us were classy and helpful without the slightest trace of condescension, which was nice considering I came in wearing a WWDC polo shirt and T2 had what appeared to be a original 1970s Dark Side of the Moon t-shirt on. This year was the 10th anniversary of the Apple Design Awards, and such they decided to celebrate by guessing the whole event up in a homage parody of the Academy Awards. This struck me as entirely apropos, as I estimate to the 1,000 of us nerds who were there, this was our Academy Award. This was our Nobel Prize. This was our moment. At the start of the evening, one of my high mucky mucks of developer relations, who happens to be a very pretty lady, floated on stage in a drop-dead gorgeous gown. We'll call her Natasha Richardson because she looked like Natasha's younger sister. Yes, I know. Natasha already has a younger sister. There's another fact you should know at this point, which is that nerds are not inherently asexual. We don't have much success with women, but that doesn't mean we are immune to their charm. Quite the opposite. We fall under such a spell that we are unable to function, and this renders us so unattractive that it creates a self-perpetuating cycle of desperate singlehood. So, in the first moment, 1,000 nerds fell in love with Natasha. Well, 996 nerd guys fell in love with her, and the 4 women in the crowd thought, wow, I wonder where she got that dress. Laurie Anderson was out partying elsewhere, but I think it's safe to assume she would have been crushing too, had she been present. As she started to speak, a strange calm came over the crowd, as if we were cavemen seeing fire for the first time, or rats hearing a certain piper. There was also some guy in a tux on stage with her. I don't know if anyone remembers, maybe he was tall. Immediately, my mind was no longer on whether I won the award, but on what I would say to her if I did. When the first award was given and the guy who won it kept whispering things as her product was described to the crowd, and I noticed that her lapel mic was sensitive enough that we could hear all what he was saying. This dashed somewhat my plans to hit on her on stage because everyone in the car would be able to hear me saying, so, want to ride in my car sometime? Assuming I move the laundry? I would have been led to understand that it's, pimp de pimp pimp pimp. Well, Natasha called out my name of our company for best user experience. The 4 of us ran on stage and I shook her hand as she handed me the cool glowing cube, hand designed by Jonathan Ives. I think, she said, congratulations, and if I recall I replied coyly, thanks, playing it smooth. Way to go, Will. Don't tip your hand out yet, old boy. Best to slip under the radar. Way under the radar. Afterwards, the winners all had to come up to the front to assign a ton of forms in exchange of our fat loot. Natasha was there amongst us, and I recognized that. If I ever would have a chance, this was it. Time to shine. I strode up to her confidently. Okay, well, I didn't stride, really, because I pinched a nerve in my neck last month, and ever since I've had to walk over, I kind of had a hunch over with my head forward as if I were Cro-Magnon man, or possibly just suffered from osteoporosis. Check it out, ladies. I'm an unevolved or very old. The problem is, if I stand up straight, the nerve gets pinched and I lose all feeling in my left arm and the ability to move it. On the other hand, I knew being hunched over was unattractive, so I kept sort of bending my lower torso backwards to compensate for my bent forward neck. The end effect being that I bobbed along like a pigeon when I walked. So I so I cuckooed up to her and gave my worst winning wince because I had tweaked the nerve in the bobbing motion. While I admit this isn't a word-for-word transcript, this is, I feel, accurate depiction of what went down. Natasha, congratulations on your win. Me, nice dress, so pretty. Where'd it just come from? Natasha, oh, an assistant, and I just ran out to the Saks today to get it. Note, to our 4-woman audience, question answered. Anyways, we're all very excited about Delicious Library. Me, dress soft, girl, pretty. Natasha, yes, so it's great to have a strategic partners like Delicious Monsters on our platform. Dress for dancing. Pretty girl go dancing with me? Natasha, I have to go over there. Now. A few moments later, she had magically changed into an absolutely gorgeous set of matching coordinates to go to dinner. I overheard her saying that she was going to schmooze some developers. I kind of felt sorry for them because they really didn't stand much of a chance. Pretty girl want us port to
Eastern Cambodia
Macintosh.
said ladera. You probably said every word in the English dictionary.
Probably said every word in the English. Pretty girl want us port to Macintosh. Us make pretty girl happy. Okay, it's almost finished. The next night, we celebrated our win in style. Oh my god, my scroll down. Our win in style. Wait, I lost. Our win in style, inviting everyone we met from the conference to get free drinks on us at Captain Eddie Rickenbacker's bar. Within stumbling distance of Moscow Center, Lori and her entourage came with us, as well as various other new best friends I met at the conference. One guy we'd met while out carousing looked and acted almost exactly like Brad Pitt, circa Ocean's 11. So we actually called him Brad to make our lives easy. In fact, a lot of us got celebrity names. Our crazy Australian friend who was dubbed Robert Downey Jr., and it was a title that fit both his looks and his personality perfectly. I don't think I ever saw him sober during the conference. I was later dubbed George Clooney, but I think at this point they were stretching their conceit. Robert Downey Jr. and I had been a couple of very pretty, very young... had seen a couple of very pretty, very young German au pairs on our way to the bar and had convinced them to come along because, well, partying with 40 guys and one lesbian is only so much fun. I talked to them for a while at the bar, but it soon came clear that they were so much too young for me, so I grabbed an extra chair and called Brad Pitt over, and then quickly turned their full attention to him. My work done. I wandered outside with a couple of drinks and sat with Lori while she smoked her American spirits. Carly, you might want to hear this part. Lori thought I might be down after getting passed over by the 20-year-olds. You know, he's so much cuter than Brad Pitt, she said, lying in that sweet motherly way that makes you feel good, but not because you believe it, but because you appreciate the sentiment behind the lie. Look at you. You're smart, successful, handsome, and very intriguing. Her friend nodded agreement. And seriously, whatever liberties I'm taking with truth elsewhere in this tale, I'm not making this part up. She said, also, you have a totally great taste in shirts.
Was that it?
Yeah, because the whole thing was... The beginning was talking about shirts, and then towards the middle you forgot about it. And then it came back about shirts.